Greetings, family. It is me, Crystal Denise, here live doing our monthly book talk. It is the last Monday of the month, and I am so thrilled and honored to have a very special guest tonight. But let me first say that one of the blessings of technology and social media is that we become connected and cross paths with people of like minds and who are kind of on the same path that you're on. And this brother, he was on my timeline, and I saw this book. Y'all know I'm always looking for books by us and for us about us. And he had written a book and he had the link with it as well, Misery and the Company It Keeps. And I thought, wow, I need that book. So I ordered it immediately. And once I received the book, I read the description and I read Baba Imhotep's words on the back. Brother Craig shared that a few days ago. And I was like, I'm just going to reach out right now. So I inboxed Brother Craig. I was like, I would love to have you come on and talk about this book. And he asked me how far had I gotten in it. I'm like, nah, I haven't started it, but I just, from the description, I know that we need to talk about this book and people need to have this book in their hands in their library. And so I am so honored and elated to have Brother Craig Samuels with me tonight. And I want to share with you all this bio because it is um, very interesting and I loved it. And I want you all to know who will be speaking and sharing with us tonight. Let me get to it. So, Brother Craig Samuels is a native of Flint, Michigan, also known as Dr. Samuels or Doc. He describes himself as an autodidact with a PhD in life experiences. How awesome is that, y'all? Those experiences led him to satisfying his curiosity of human behavior by researching the causes and effect of what we do and why. Craig, who is also a published author, is a ghostwriter as well, lending his unique skill set to those who have stories locked away inside but lack the ability to articulate their realities. In addition to ghostwriting and authoring his own books, he is also a mentor to young adults, a counselor, and an advisor on relationship matters, and a recovery coach to those dealing with substance abuse. Craig is supported by many of his clients and mentees, but none more than his biggest fan, his divine compliment of 18 years. Wow. Mrs. Renee Samuels. Craig says his purpose is to lend his voice to the voiceless and strength to the weak, like that, as a means of encouraging and empowering them to take control of their lives so that they can become the best version of themselves. Welcome, Brother Doc Craig Samuels.
Thank you, Crystal, for having me. It is indeed an honor that you invite me to your platform so we can discuss my book and the content and just have some fun on a
Yes.
serious matter.
Right, right, right. So I always like to start off, and I always ask this question: why this book? Why misery? Why talk about uh and why this book? Just why this subject matter?
Good question. I'm glad you asked. Well, per observance or observation, you and the people that I deal with, from counseling to just having conversations, lending my advice, and I listen, and it made me wonder why some of the people that I talk to, and outside of the lanes that I participate in, why do we do what we do? Why do we stay in one place so long to take all the negativity that we don't have to take? And it leads us to a place of stagnation,
Mm-hmm.
and being stagnated, you're not moving, you're unhappy, yet you're still dealing with the things that you are going to counseling for. That's defeating the purpose. So for me, misery came to mind.
Mm,
And misery keeps us, we grew up hearing misery sure loves company, right?
Right.
But no one ever asks why.
Right.
Why does misery love company, and what kind of company does misery keep?
Mm.
And so for me, this got my mind going, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to start using some of my own personal experiences and the experiences that I've observed
Mm-hmm.
based on the decisions that people made that kept them in the miserable place. And then on the flip side, decisions that people made that allowed them to escape that, and go on to become uh, the best version of themselves. So misery and the company it keeps. Uh, it, I mean, it's somewhat self-explanatory
Mm-hmm.
because we do know misery keeps company.
Yeah.
But I wanted to give it a whole nother perspective, and I think that I captured that in this book.
Yeah. I know you did. Um, you start off with talking about the adversity quotient. And that was interesting because I never heard that phrase before. Can you explain that a little bit more in detail?
Yeah.
Adversity quotient.
Yes, that's based on the work of Dr. Paul Stokes,
Mm-hmm.
AQ, which is the adversity quotient. Let me give you an example. We know we have IQ, and we are mainly zeroed in on IQ, how intelligent we are.
Mm-hmm.
But even in the most adverse situations, our intelligence doesn't help us make the best decision because
Right.
we get emotional, and when we're emotional, we make irrational decisions, and so that keeps you it takes you deeper into the issue that you have. You're in a quagmire of a miserable condition versus having a high adversity quotient, a high AQ. It keeps you calm under pressure. You need to keep a level head when you're faced with adverse situations because you need to make the best decision possible. Now, without that adversity quotient, without having a cool head, without being able to think rationally, well, what are you going to do? What is normally the end result? An irrational decision. And from irrational decisions, you suffer consequences.
Right.
And so AQ is that's why I use that for us to
Yeah.
mentally grasp hold to. Well, I'll say this. I often use the example of Michael Jordan. They put the ball in Michael Jordan's hands at the end of the game. It's 3 seconds left. Why? Because he has ice water in his veins. He has a high AQ. He operates at the highest level under pressure. He's not going to be irrational. He's not going to be nervous. He's going to be cool, calm, and collected, and keep his head about him. This is why through the 13 years we saw him play, we saw so many game winners, buzzer beaters, if you would, versus that individual who doesn't have that high AQ, who can't operate on that level. And that's just one simple example, of dealing with AQ, or what AQ is and how it assists us in our decision making.
So how do you because I know some people do have a higher AQ. So how do you develop that, and how do people recognize that they don't? You talk about coping mechanisms as well, because some people just don't handle pressure. And how do we learn how to handle it?
How do you learn how to handle adverse
Yeah.
situations? Well, environment is one. We many of us are victims of circumstance or products of our environment. If you grew up in an environment where the adults around you didn't handle adversity well,
Yeah.
stands to reason you won't either.
Right.
So it's hand me down pain, it's hand me down trauma, it's hand me down irrationality or rationale. And so if you haven't seen anyone handle adverse situations, then you don't have the template for what it looks like. You don't have that example. You have the alternate. You have the opposite example. So how do you gain that? Well, you have to learn. Everything else is you have learned helplessness,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have learned behavior. It's like we learn how to behave irrationally. We learn how to behave in a maladaptive manner. we learn how to behave outside of ourselves. Well, there's a flip side to everything. It's the law of polarity. You can also learn how to behave in the manner that best suits your character. And how do you do that? You surround yourself with people who are already there. And that's one step. If, Crystal, you are dealing with, if you recognize that there's something going on with yourself,
Mm-hmm.
like for instance, you're sick, and you walk into a room full of people who have the flu, it stands to reason if you stay there long enough, you're going to get sick too.
Right.
You have to remove yourself from the situation. You have to allow yourself time and space to get well. Once you get well, you no longer mingle yourself around these individuals who are sick, who are still operating in their trauma, which leads to the dysfunctional behavior. And so you you align yourself with people who are rational. You align yourself with people who know better. This is why we are often encouraged to get counseling or go to
Mm-hmm.
therapy, because you have a therapist who can teach you how to center yourself, how to make better decisions, how to make rational decisions. Again, another example, being an alcoholic and you, or a drug addict, and you wake up one day and decide, I'm tired of being drunk, I'm tired of being sick and high. So you
Mm-hmm.
make a decision to go to rehab, and you go to rehab and you dry out for 6 months, you dry out to a year, however long it takes you. When you come back out, you're not strong enough to go back around those same individuals you were
Right.
drinking high with. You need to connect to someone who has your best interests and who's strong enough and doesn't have a problem telling you where you're getting it wrong at. This is the coaching process, or what we call the recovery process as well, until you're strong enough, and strong enough mentally, strong enough emotionally, strong enough spiritually, to be able to make better decisions and rational decisions. So this is the conclusion that I came to in just observing people, starting with myself, because a lot of what's in the book, I was guilty of.
Mm-hmm.
So it came from a lot of personal experiences and then observation as well.
Yeah. When you said being around people, I think because it just made me think about something, because I'm fortunate enough to have lived in a, I say fortunate to have lived in a segregated town, because now when I look back at it, that segregation was actually a safer space for us, because it was a really small town, and so it was really a community and a village. And I think a lot of our unable to cope has come from assimilation, because we're not as nurtured anymore. We're not as I don't know, in that safety net anymore, where we had the entire community, people on your block that really looked out for you and cared for you. Now everything, there's an excuse for everything, and then there wasn't. It was more accountability attached to who you were than there is now. That's
Right.
just my thought, on some of that, because I think when you're exposed to a wide range of behavior, you're prone to pick up some of that, and not all of it is for our benefit. Some of it is detrimental behavior.
Right. Well, and with that, I'm glad you said it that way, which would be a nice segue into the point I want to make here with that. Again, we become products of our environment. It stands to reason that if you are around someone who is underdeveloped or undeveloped in their behavior, then it only stands to reason that you begin to act that way as well. I like to use examples with movies, like, for instance, Dracula. Vampires seek seek out someone. Once they get the victim, once they buy the victim, you are no longer yourself. You now take on the characteristics of the vampire. You're now taking on the identity of the vampire. You're now a subordinate of the host. And so now what you do is you carry out the wishes of the one who turned you. So pretty soon you have a whole clique or coven of vampires. And vampires have a major problem with mirrors. They can't see themselves. Now you contrast that with people. Some people don't want to go and see themselves because it reminds them of the truth of who they are and what they're not. So like vampires, they throw sheets over the mirror so I don't accidentally run up and see myself and have to come face to face with that truth. It's easier to evade the truth of me, but I can develop 20/20 vision into everybody else.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So we
Yeah.
have that vampire energy. We have vampires of consciousness or energy vampires who come to for no other reason but to suck us of our essence. You know, you look up and you wonder why 6 months have passed and you haven't been doing the very thing that you love to do. You want to check your circle because you've probably been bitten. Now your friends are no longer coming around you. You're no longer doing, you don't feel like yourself. You don't look like yourself. You're not acting like yourself. Well, you're going to check your circle because there's a chance that either you're miserable and you're keeping company of miserable people, or misery has found you and you become the company that misery loves to keep. And so with that being said, moving into the definition of misery, you have miser. Is the root word of misery. What is a miser? One who hoards. One who hoards things. You can hoard money. You hoard baseball cards or what have you. Well, you have some people who hoard bitterness. As you saw this in my book, they hoard bitterness. They have justifications for that bitterness. They hoard past offenses to use against you later on and to use also to justify their behavior for why they are the way they are. Okay, so let's bring this around. So these type of individuals find themselves keeping company with like-minded individuals, because a person who isn't miserable, a person who is about their business, who is building a lifestyle that makes them happy and connecting with like-minded individuals, well, they're not going to stop for any length of time to keep company with a miserable individual, because this person, like I said, is a vampire. And then you have people who have the mentality to have the audacity to be angry with you for being happy.
Right.
How dare you wake up in the morning with a smile on your face? How dare you have friends who love you? How dare you have a lifestyle that people envy? How dare you make decisions for your own best interest so you can become the best version of yourself? How dare you? Let me find some type of way to sabotage this person. So I'll speak ill of you. I'll speak ill of your reputation. I'll try to destroy your credibility, sabotage anything positive you have going on because I'm unfulfilled. And I don't want to make the necessary decisions that you made to get to where you are. It's easier for me to try to sabotage your walk, your purpose. And I've had that happen to me.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've had it happen to you. And so misery in the company it keeps. Miserable individuals are only going to be around themselves so they can bounce their misery off of each other, and in so doing justify each other's misery. So what that does is strengthen them in their weaknesses. They don't get stronger and strong enough to come out of it. They grow stronger in their weaknesses, so they stay in that miserable condition for as long as, however it's going to be, until there's an intervention or until there's an epiphany. So as I wrote about the coping mechanisms, instead of dealing with the healing process, I'll find something to cope.
Right.
Whether it's a workaholic, the things that I mentioned, becoming a workaholic.
Materialism. That's one of my favorites.
Right. Materialism, drugs, what else I mentioned, alcohol, smoking weed, cocaine, whatever the vice is. That's my coping mechanism. And I'll also defend my coping mechanism when challenged about my position.
Right.
Misery in the company it keeps. And so how do we get well? How do we get here? Because I have people who have come to me and they have, well, it's been their mothers. And these people don't want to, let me say this, let me back up. Life is an abundance of decision making. And some of
Yeah.
those decisions are going to be very difficult to make, but they're going to be necessary.
Yeah.
And some people find it difficult to make the decision to rid themselves of the parasites in their midst, of the vampire in their midst, of
Yeah.
that toxic, nefarious individual in their midst, in their circle. And sometimes it's your mama.
Hmm. Yeah.
Sometimes it's your father. Sometimes it's big mama. Sometimes it's your best friend. But because we will use, but that's still my mama, as an excuse, you stay in close proximity to this behavior, to this toxicity, and that stagnates you. So what mom is doing, or whoever it is projecting her misery. Dr. Joy DeGruy, and I talk about that in the book, calls it vicarious traumatization. Someone else's pain is living off of you and through you.
Yes.
And
Yes.
because of who it is, you won't make the necessary decision to rid yourself. Step out of that circle. Put some space between you, her, him, or them. Because if you don't, healing will be the last thing that you come to realize.
Right.
Before you know it, 10 years have gone by.
Right.
You're still in the same place, dealing with the same people. You're just as sick as they are, complaining. But you won't make the decision.
Brother Keith Bell said, your book helped me to not only recognize vampires, but to develop wooden stakes to draw them out of my life. Wow. That's a powerful testimony.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thank you for that, Keith. Keith is one of my biggest supporters. He's one of my mentees. He's one of the brothers that I've been counseling for some years now, but wonderful guy. So thank you, Keith. So misery in the company it keeps. I'm looking here at Burnt Bridges, chapter 6. I'm skipping ahead some. Sometimes because we won't make those decisions, we find ourselves burning bridges when we come across a Craig Samuels or a Crystal Denise who is telling you, who's challenging you in your position, who's giving you truth, who's giving you insights, who's giving you wise counsel. All you have to do is make the decision. You can't make the decision for you, but people will get upset because you have the nerve to tell them, hey, this is your problem right here. Instead of petting them and emboldening them, or leaving them with a sense of entitlement to stay where they are, versus challenging them to come out. So people will get upset with you for having the nerve to tell them, hey, you know what? Your problem is that man. Your problem is that woman. Your problem is your mama. Your problem are those people you hanging with. Your problem is your church and them pastor and the rest of the clique, the religious clique you hanging. People will get upset about that. How dare you? But you came to me for help. But how dare I say something that contradicts your present situation? So what am I supposed to do? So people will stop messing. They'll burn a bridge before they hear you, only to go on and later on down the line do a retrospect and find out Crystal was telling me the truth. Craig was telling me the truth. Yeah. Now I have more pieces to pick up than I would have had a year ago, 2 years ago. Now the healing process is that much further down the corridors of time. Now, you can always start. It's never too late to start, but you lose time. You lose time when you won't, and that's another thing. Listening.
Yes. Yes.
We won't listen to the people who have our best interests. Because truth is a horse pill this big.
Yeah.
No, you may choke on it going down, but it's going to be good for you. It's medicinal. Unfortunately, we've been socially conditioned to live upside down, inside out, backwards. Everything that is true is shunned. Everything that is a lie or just totally ridiculous, that's what we, and of course, I'm only talking to those who it applies to.
Right.
That's what we gravitate to.
Yeah.
And then we sit up one and we wonder why our lives are as tasteless and insipid, like a colorless mirage, as I mentioned in the book, and wonder why we're going nowhere. Oh, I have my red bottoms and
Right.
my I got my red bottoms, I got frequent flyer miles in my passport. I got a brand name closet. My bank account got the mumps. I can do what I want to do and go where I want to go and buy what I want to buy. But at the end of the day, you're alone with your thoughts. And this is why many people stay busy, because they
Right.
don't want to be alone with their own thoughts. Because the thoughts, your conscious
Mm-hmm.
reality of what's going on with you is always there. And so we stay in chapter 10. I talk about born into still waters. You stay in the still water. You stay in that polluted, contaminated situation. Your circumstances don't improve, they get worse. And
Mm-hmm.
still waters doesn't produce life, it exterminates life.
Yeah.
And so misery in the company it keeps. And so the people that I've talked to, and I'm still talking to this day as I'm talking to you, we have to develop the courage and the fortitude to make the decision for our own best interest. You only have one life. You don't want to be 75 or 80 and you look up and you have regrets. I should have did this. I should have did that. I should have made this move. I stayed here too long. I stayed there too long. Why did I let this happen to me? And I know some people like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's a terrible thing to see, because oftentimes we say, well, it's never too late. Well, it depends on what we're talking about. It can be too late.
Yeah.
It can be too late for you to make another decision to get yourself on the path you should have been on 25 years ago. And so what happens? Misery sets in. Now let's look at misery, because we often throw it in the category of definition that was given to us as children. Misery, some people will look at it as some 400-pound person sitting in a trailer park watching reruns of All My Children with a gallon of ice cream and a pound of cookies.
Right.
That's one aspect of it. Misery is also having everything you need, seemingly, and you're still not happy. And because you're not happy, I need to find someone to take that out on.
Mm.
That's misery. So I guess money doesn't answer everything. I guess your material things don't answer everything. I guess what you thought makes you happy really doesn't. It lends you a false sense of security because you don't want to come face to face with things you need to address. You can't run from problems, because everywhere you go, there you are. And we have to make those decisions for our own best interests. I had to make decisions for my own best interests. I'm pushing 60 years old. I refuse to live the remainder of my days dealing with some of the things I was dealing with back when.
Right.
I,
Same.
I had to make the decision. Nobody else is going to do it for you. It was going to be me. You're going to stay in this pig pen. You're going to stay dealing with, because pigs understand nothing but wallowing in the mud. I don't care how much you try to clean them up, how many pearls you try to shower this pig with. It doesn't understand anything but nastiness and filth. So you have a choice to make. And I'm going to stay here in this miserable condition with individuals who don't want to make a decision to better themselves, or I'm going to get up and get gone and never mind how they feel about it. Because when it's all said and done, it's just me anyway. My life, my one life. So misery in the company it keeps, which takes us back into chapter 4. changing the pattern of your paradigm. You cannot enter into a new paradigm practicing old habits. Some of us think we can heal an effect with an effect.
Mm.
You're going to have to find the cause, sugar booger.
Yeah.
Brother, you're going to have to find out what the cause is. And sometimes the cause, again, is not something we really want to see and acknowledge and recognize, because it puts us in a position to have to make that tough decision. Again, we're going back to people, because who else is it? Who else could it be? Not a stranger. The company misery keeps are normally those who are in close proximity to you.
Mm.
It's not a stranger. You don't hang out with strangers. You keep company with people you know, or at
Yeah.
least company you think you
Thank
know.
you. Mhm.
Right. And people who think they know you too.
Yeah.
And some people can't stand the fact that you're not the Crystal or the Craig from 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
They need to keep you there in their minds, because that's where they can deal with you better. I don't know this advanced Crystal, this advanced Craig. His thinking is different. He moves differently. He speaks differently. You don't want to go drink. You don't want to go to the club. You don't want to do none
Yeah.
of those things. You know. So I need to think of you in that same capacity, because it makes me feel better. And at the same time, it also, your light, your development, your growth, and your maturity is a light that shines on their lack of growth, their lack of maturity, their lack of development. Hence misery. You're not a candidate for the company misery loves to keep. You have to be a candidate for that. And you have to qualify for it. And it's a mentality. It's a behavior. Now, why? Trauma, dysfunction, or as I like to quote Dr. Joy DeGruy, multi-generational trauma and dysfunction. It's generational trauma. It's
Yeah.
passed down to me. It's passed down to us.
I was just pulling this book off my shelf.
Right. And I have
Post-traumatic slave disorder syndrome.
right. So that it and I've done a lot of talking, but I'm going to give you an opportunity to ask your questions. But however, the misery is multifaceted.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't come in just one form, and many times we don't recognize it because of who it is. And so we're getting bitten. We have the vampires around us. We have
Yeah.
ticks and parasites around us. We don't realize it, and we're not paying attention because of who it is. Well, I grew up with her. Well, that's my partner. We've been down for 25 years. But when your back is turned, it's cutting your throat, talking about you. Misery loves company. Now, are you going to fail or refuse to make the decision that separates you from that company? Or are you going to allow yourself to become the company misery loves to keep? It all boils down to decisions. It all boils down to choices.
So, do you? Because I'm big on protecting my space, my mental space and peace, and I find that social media is it is a misery place. It's not a safe space in some regards. Do you think that it has added to that misery to some for some folks?
Absolutely. It is added to misery. It is added to the fantasy mentality.
Yeah.
It is added to a faux reality, because it pacifies those type of individuals and it justifies them not coming face to face with their reality. See,
Hmm.
reality is honest,
Yeah.
and people don't want honesty. What do you mean? Because coming face to face with myself and my reality, or reality in general, means having to put forth the effort to make a decision. See, I keep going back to decision. It's either keep, it's either remaining in denial,
Mm-hmm.
or I make a decision. Yeah, it's going to be hard. It may be painful, but it's necessary if you're going to live, versus simply existing in a
Yeah.
mundane state.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had to changing the pattern of your paradigm. There's in the opening sentence, people are conditioned to be what they are until they take control of the conditioning process. It is then that the pattern of their paradigm changes to complement the essence of who they are. Until this happens, you will continue operating in accordance with the old way of thinking and doing. And you cannot enter into a new paradigm practicing old habits. Going back to that first sentence, you're the captain of the ship. As long as you let somebody navigate your life, they define your reality.
Mm.
It isn't until you make them walk the plank and command, step to the helm of your own situation, that things will begin to change. So when you have people around you, and you have certain people who have to have people around them because those types of people, they feel, validate them.
Yeah.
They need to be accepted or feel accepted. So I'll allow myself to become the butt of jokes. I'll allow myself to become a follower and deny the leader in me because I simply want to be accepted. Well, where does that come from? Well, that comes from deprivation. There are things that were left out in your childhood that you carried into your adulthood. And you're still doing those same things. You're still having a need to be validated. You have a need to be needed by people. And so what happens? You become a puppet of the group, or you become a member of a clique, and all of you move together, think together, walk and talk alike. Nobody grows, nobody learns from each other because all of you are stuck and arthritic in your thinking, governed by the trauma that you refuse to recognize.
Yeah. It's a real good comments. Angela Price, my cousin, says this his that nail on the head. I do not have the book yet, but I will be ordering it as soon as this is over. And I'm telling you, once you pick it up, you won't put it down, because when I was reading that first chapter and it said misery loves company, people don't like to see you happy. I'm a witness to that. Every day I wake up with the attitude of, what am I going to do today? What am I going to do today that's going to make a difference? And so when I having that attitude keeps me focused and driven. And I tell people all the time, I told my sister, I'm like, if you are down and out, start working with the children. I mean, they'll give you a life like, they'll just brighten your day, because they brighten mine. And I'm honored to be at this stage in my life where I can be that person for our young adults and for our children. But I wanted to ask you, because with so much going on, especially, back to social media and just all the uh behavior, all the dysfunction in the world today, do you think that there's an addiction to trauma and drama in our society?
Addiction to trauma and drama. Yes. Chapter, what is it, 11, I believe, the drama
Mhm.
of untreated trauma.
Yes.
And I mean, it's self-explanatory. There's going to be nothing but drama as long as your trauma goes untreated. Some people need that. They want that because otherwise they have, again, that mundane existence.
Hmm.
They wake up in the morning working out to get in some drama. I'm going to the gym to get strong enough to engage in drama.
Yeah.
I have to be combative. I have to be argumentative. I have to
Right.
be standoffish. I have to be difficult. And that's a hard case. And I've found that the hardest cases are those who are in the most pain.
Mm.
because they've locked themselves behind this hard exterior to protect the injured place in them. And so you're going to get this, you're going to get this, you're going to get, you're going to get that. And because they've been hurt. And that the only way they know how to protect themselves is to always fight, to be aggressive. So yes, what I say is it an addiction? I'll say if somebody doesn't help an individual like that see a different way to go about things, it will become irreversible.
Yeah.
Because you can grow old in that mentality, in that attitude. And all that does is set you up to be by your lonely at 80, at 85, because when you were 30 and 40, you were mean and cantankerous.
Yeah.
Difficult. Miserable. You never had a nice word to say about anybody. And that's something else. Some people, I'm talking about the miserable beings. They have to look down their nose and say mean, nasty things to you in order to feel better about the empty places in them. There's so many voids that are empty, unfilled voids, and they don't know what to do to fill them. So they fill them with the wrong things, which only strengthens their bitterness, only strengthens the mentality of misery. So then what happens? Well, people stop calling. People stop coming by.
Mm-hmm.
People go the other way when they see you coming because they know you ain't got nothing good to say. So addiction, maybe not addicted to it, but not so much, not knowing how to navigate through that terrain of trauma. So dysfunction becomes the lifestyle.
Dysfunction, okay.
Dysfunction becomes the behavior 24/7. They're not going to, and anything that sounds reasonable or logical, they're going to shoot down because it brings them face to face with themselves. Goes back to what I was saying about vampires. The old Dracula movies, if you remember in Castle Dracula, he had sheets over his mirror. Why? Because he no longer casts a reflection. And he knew that. So seeing himself and not seeing himself is a reminder of the bloodthirsty monstrosity he's become. You don't want to be reminded of that. So I contrast that with people. Some people avoid their mirrors because if they look too long, they see the truth. So I'm going to put that proverbial sheet over it and not acknowledge myself in all my raggedy behavior and my messiness, my drama. I'll stay in a traumatized state as long as I don't have to address me. But I got all the smoke for you. Misery and the company it keeps. Now, outside of that circle, outside of the circumference of the existence of those type of individuals are people like yourself, people like some of the people who are watching us right now, who aren't miserable, who are up every day doing something constructive to better themselves and to better the people around them, whether they're related to them or not. I'm trying to do something constructive and impactful and effective in my community. I don't have time for you and your woes. And this is what enrages that miserable person. How dare you act like you better than me? So now the chitter chatter. Anything they can say or do to discredit you, they'll say it and do it. And this is why I came forth with the book. Again, Manipulative Moves on the Chessboard of Misery, Chapter 7. Second paragraph. What is the chessboard of misery? It is the ground upon what one stands when they are in full operation of their manipulative mode of conduct, meaning wherever they are is their chessboard of misery. A manipulator doesn't stop doing what they do because their geographical location has changed. That's like saying a tiger is no longer a tiger because it isn't in its natural habitat. No, a tiger is still a tiger that simply is in a controlled environment. a condition that narcissists despise. They must be in control, which is why they practice the art of manipulation. I don't want to sound repetitive by constantly zeroing in on narcissism and manipulation, but it's necessary for a moment longer to shed even more light on why misery loves company. The company that misery keeps is indicative of the misery itself. So that is the magnetism that misery has, is where I'm going. We know about the law of attraction.
Mm-hmm.
We see love recognizes itself. Misery recognizes itself too. So you have these individuals who will come together and have their miserable tea party, sharing miserable stories about their misery and who's responsible for it.
Right.
See, it's always, again, the pointing of the accusatory finger versus the opposite, which is love and consideration, concern, caring, authenticity, being genuine. Well, those type of individuals have that same energy who will draw. Case in point, if you don't mind, I'll shout out a few people
Yes, please.
who who I was drawn to just to make my point. I want to shout out to Baba Imhotep. Shout out to Dr. Ma'at. Shout out to Baba Baruti.
Yes.
Shout out to Dr. Tadika
Yes.
Kilimanjaro. You know, shout out to those individuals because I watched their work, I've listened to them, and it resonates with me. Now
Right.
they don't have time to stand still and lament over decisions they won't make to better their situation. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm drawn to that. Now, if I wasn't in that same mentality and they were the opposite, I would still be drawn to that. I can go along around them and gossip about the things that I won't do anything to help myself or to change, especially if I'm going to continue to keep the same company. Well, you must like being miserable. You must like the company you keep or the
Mm-hmm.
company that's keeping you.
Right. And that makes me think of us as a collective, Black people as a collective. So many of us like to post and complain, but there are people out here doing work and latch on to that. If you are righteous and about the business of really wanting to see the change, latch on to that and stop going over here and making these posts and all these other people that love your misery. Come on, and amen and ashe that misery. So it just makes me think of the collective as well, not
Yeah,
just as individuals.
it is. And well, social media has become a circus. It's been a
Mm-hmm.
circus for a long time where you have a bunch of court jesters posting on a regular basis. Um, People who are about their lives, who are about getting things done, making the connections, and again, being impactful. When they do post, it's in alignment with what they do in real time.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And so uh, you depends on where you are mentally, where you are emotionally, where's your spirit, what condition is your soul in, and it doesn't have to stay that way. And I've told many people who some of my clients, some of my mentees who have chosen the opposite, who have chosen darkness. You don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
The same way you chose the darkness, you can choose the light.
Right.
It's a decision you have to make. And you're going to have to be okay with how your so-called friends feel about the decision you make. You're
Yes.
going to have to love yourself enough to give yourself permission to be happy. Even if you have to stand alone in your happiness, building your life. Because if you don't, as I said in the book, you look up and 365 days have gone by and you realize it's actually been 730.
Mm-hmm.
You done lost 2 years
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
you refuse to make a decision. You too preoccupied wondering about what other people are going to say, what they're going to think, and how they're going to feel about your life.
Mm.
And so that is one of the reasons, one of the several reasons that I wrote this book, because I wanted to just put it out there as raw as I possibly could, but,
Mm-hmm.
but add a little academia to it as well to give some scholarly terms to define what we're looking at, to define the behavior, without you know without losing people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that is some of what uh, um, I wanted to share, and I'm glad again you brought me on to get some of this out. I have so much more, but I know we're not going to be on that long.
Mm-hmm. Well, you
So
can go ahead and share because I think I really enjoy reading chapter 13, Misery is a Witch, and your description of the witches and how they come and just manipulate. I like the word manipulate because I think most manipulators know that they're manipulating people and
yeah,
places. I mean, people and events. I think they know, and so that was interesting. The Is it the last chapter
yes,
of the book? Yes,
yeah,
that was
misery is a
really
witch.
interesting to me because I think a lot of times we put the band-aid on the bullet wounds. Our behavior reflects that, and you really brought drove that point in to me. Putting band-aid on bullet wounds because I think
Mhm.
we do a lot of that,
Right.
and we just aren't aware of it. Uh, so you can just, if you have anything else you want to go over, because I want you to give the ordering information out as well, because I know people want the book now. So go
Okay.
ahead.
Well, misery is a witch. I opened that up with a quote by Randall Robinson from his book, The Debt. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and talking about denial. Denial is not a reflex of logic, and its comforts are fickle and temporary. It not only causes those cocooned to see no evil through the opaque walls of their shells, but more often than not, obliges the self-deluded to paint pleasing murals of faux realities up on their wall. Witches are going to deny their witchness, and then so because they have become entrenched. Their witchy attitude has become part of who they are, their character, their personality.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty much a wrap for a person who's donning the title and operating from the position of a witch. Premeditation is another term we outside of manipulation, because you have people who see you and will concoct whatever type. They'll go home and think about how they can hurt you. So it's premeditated. So it's nothing short of when a witch does, they'll open up their book of incantations and spells. As I wrote in the book, they get on their evil communication device, which is the
Mm-hmm.
phone,
Mm-hmm.
and they start spewing all types of incantations, which is gossip about whoever it is.
Yeah.
We know words have power.
Yeah.
I said it in a jokingly manner, but I was serious when I said, yeah, that tingling you get in your spine sometimes is not because you have a backache. Somebody somewhere talking real greasy behind your back, carving out your spine. And it's
Mm.
somebody you know. This is a witch. Misery is a witch.
Mm.
And so, just to lend that. Also, I'll add to this: caged freedom. Well, that's an oxymoron.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Craig, how can you be caged and free at the same time? Well, to say, for instance, you have a person who has done 15 years in the joint. Warden comes on the day of release, opens up your cell. You can go. You've done your time, but you refuse to get up and leave. Now the cell remains open, but you stay put because you've become comfortable in the environment that you're in. You become institutionalized. Also, there's a precedent of fear that has been established there, because coming out of that cell and walking out of what you know for the last 15 years and going out here into an uncertain reality. So instead of leaving this cell, I'll stay here and invite anybody who will listen in my cell
Hmm.
to converse with me. It's a caged, but I'm also free. I can leave when I want. I just have to make a decision to do so. And many of us have that. We have that outside of a penitentiary existence. We build our own penitentiaries out here in the so-called free world. You can
Mm-hmm.
come out if you want to, but you choose to stay in a caged existence when the cell door is open.
Hmm.
Misery is a witch. Well, how do you connect the two? Well, there's been a spell played on your mind for the past 15 years that suggests I should stay here. Freedom, well, that's going to be too difficult for me to handle. That means I have to make decisions. I got people here making decisions for me. They tell me when to get up. They tell me when I can shower, when I can exercise. They tell me when I can have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They tell me when I got to go to bed. That's been my existence. Out here, I have to make decisions for myself. Here, I'd rather stay in this miserable, witch-like condition versus go out there and make the decisions to better myself, to become a better version of myself, to link up and network with individuals who can help me because I'm afraid of the uncertainty. I'm afraid of failing, or my mind is just so conditioned to my present circumstances, I don't even want to deal with anything outside of what I currently know. So we stay in a caged freedom situation.
So, do you think that some people suffer from misery instead of depression? Because I think
Yes,
depression is a catch-all for a lot of people to
yes.
use.
Just like everything else, there's a cause and effect.
Mm-hmm.
The trauma we suffer, I use myself.
Yeah.
I was depressed for a long time because of the trauma
Yeah.
that my traumatic experiences. And so my coping mechanism were some of the things you saw in the book, smoking,
Yeah.
drinking, because
Yeah.
they listened. The weed didn't talk back.
Right.
The alcohol didn't put me down. You know, those things made me feel better, but only for a short time, which is a false sense of security,
Mm-hmm.
coping mechanism. So the depression strengthens, doesn't go away.
Yeah.
I become stronger in my weaknesses because I'm feeding my weaknesses. My vice is the trauma, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't have anybody who cares enough about me. I'm just using an example to help me overcome my trauma. So then I slide into dysfunction. And in order to deal with my dysfunction, I slide into self-medication. And depression is waiting on me. Now you have different types of depression as well. You have suicidal OCD. Uh, you have, and I have some things written here, disassociation or DID, dissociative identity disorder.
Mm-hmm.
I just disassociate from everything and
Yeah.
everyone. And I become, this is how alternate personalities are formed. Now, when we get into that, we'll get into that on the next time we meet. But uh, obsessive compulsive disorder.
Yeah.
You have complex PSTD, post traumatic stress disorder.
Mm-hmm.
Post traumatic stress disorder is a trigger for suicidal OCD.
Mm.
So we have to be careful. So you don't know who you're dealing with and what their trauma has been and what mental state they're in. And if they don't know or refuse to know or refuse to get help, well, then again, what you have here is a very irrational, overly emotional, or emotionally unstable individual. And they're not going to hear you
Yeah.
unless you have a ton of patience. In those situations, what I've done, I gave them the space they needed. I did
Mm-hmm.
what I could do, said what I could say, and then, hope they heard me. Sometimes, Crystal, I'm sure you know this, and there's everyone who's listening, it's not your assignment. Whoever it is you come in contact with, it may just be your job to plant the seed.
Yeah.
Whoever else they come in contact with will pour the water to germinate whatever it is, that will eventually reach the mental to cause them to make a decision for their own best interest. Sometimes we stay too long with any one individual thinking that we got all the answers for them, and we don't, and we do more
Mm-hmm.
harm than good. We add to their misery, which then frustrates us.
Yeah.
You, you
Yeah,
know,
and that makes me, think about the whole concept of community and village. And when we see someone who obviously has something going on with them, don't use that phrase, how much does your help cost? We really have to be caring and concerned and righteous and want to help that person, because like I said, we talk a lot about mental wellness and all that, but then sometimes when someone shows up that obviously has something going on, we turn our head, or we laugh, or we make light of it.
yes,
So,
I stayed away from chapter 2 on purpose. How much does your help cost?
yeah.
Because that's a heavy topic to get into,
Hmm.
and many people, those who've had the book, have the book and have read it, and we've had that discussion. Chapter 2, chapter 4, chapter
Yeah.
8 have been one of the ones, some of the main chapters that, people say, hey, well, this, you really made me think about some things, because
Hmm.
unfortunately, we've been conditioned in this society to put a dollar amount on everything,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, and, but I won't get started there. But if you have any more questions, I'd love to answer your questions.
I don't, but I just want to go through some of the comments. Sister Mila said, "This is so good. All I want to do is listen." Uh, and then we have Brother Malik on, and he was big on protecting your peace and your happiness as well. See who else we have up here. Sister Mila says she can't wait to get her copy.
It's on the way.
Yeah. So yeah. So I just want to say that when I finished the book, I did tell you that it was one of the best books that I've read, and I stand by that even now. If you don't have a copy, you need to get a copy. Misery and the Company It Keeps. So I do have a question. Those of us who are out here doing the work, one thing that I try to do is teach us that we have to have some type of institution so that we can teach our children how to love themselves. Because I know if I had known who I was, who I am at an earlier age, maybe some of those bad decisions that I made, I would have not have made. And so, as far as teaching our children, what would you do? What would you say um, we should be doing in that regard?
Well, with that, one more person I shout out is Baba Amin.
Mm-hmm.
And I would use their examples. Baba Imhotep in the Kimoyo Shule Africana, Baba Amin in the Uhuru Academy, Baba Baruti in Atlanta and what they're doing. We have to care.
Yeah.
I can give you a whole bunch of scholarship terms, and they really won't amount to anything. I like to keep things very simple because we have a tendency to look over things that are what I call profound simplicity. We look
Yeah.
over that because it's not
Yeah.
mystical. It's not, it is, oh, that was powerful. Well, simplicity is powerful too. So care,
Mm-hmm.
you have to give a damn.
Right.
So, you you find out what that child's bent is, and you cultivate them in that capacity. You listen to them, you guide them, give them room to grow into who they're going to be.
Yeah.
Guide them.
Yeah.
So you teach them who they are. The younger, the better. From the
Yeah.
time you comprehend whatever language you're speaking, that's what you do. And I'm speaking, and I'm really compassionate and passionate about that, because I didn't have let's say a male figure. I didn't have a male figure around it. I didn't have that, so I'm very passionate about that with the children. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, the kids come in contact with the children, you know. Yeah, I got time.
Right.
There's something I call thought without a voice. Well, how do you have that? Well, you have thought without a voice. You rob when you refuse to give that child an audience. When he or she is coming to you with their questions, with their concerns, whatever it is, and you're too busy to stop and pay attention, you won't lend them an audience. You rob them of their voice. And if mama won't listen to him, or daddy won't listen to him, or some responsible adult won't make time because you preoccupied with things of an insignificant nature, you put them in a position to talk to somebody who won't have their best interests.
Exactly.
That gang member, that somebody outside of the parameters of safety. So thoughts without a voice. So that's what we do. Pay attention to the children. They're
Mm-hmm.
smarter than they're smarter than we think. That we give them credit
Yes.
for.
Yes.
So I can go on and say a whole bunch of other stuff, but that's where it begins right there. From the time they're able to speak and you can make out what they're saying, you better listen. Because if you don't, you put them in a position to talk to somebody else who will listen and take advantage of their naivete, their gullibility, and their vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got more problems on your hands.
Agree. Agree. And that's one thing that I learned when I was a mother. I did listen, but I listened not to, I was like not there 100%. And so as I started growing and evolving, I learned how to just stop and give my undivided attention and then ask questions. Uh,
Yeah,
and have a genuine interest in what it is. And now I have a granddaughter, and I really have learned, trying to get on camera, I really learned how to pay closer attention, and I try to guide and teach my daughter how to do it. Because she's 8, and she is really at that age where she's absorbing so much from
yeah,
us and from other environments that she's in. So yeah, I really appreciate that wisdom,
yeah,
Baba.
yeah.
Um,
They need our protection now more than ever. They need us to be involved now more than ever. And I won't segue into another, but I'm glad you asked that question. So, uh, yeah, yeah. So
So
whatever.
I think Baba Omar came on late. He said, "Is misery the result of a stagnated life or a bad opinion of oneself?" Um,
Both,
yeah.
because they're both, because they both have causes. You get to the cause. See, we have the proclivity to judge surface reality.
Hmm.
That's the what. The what is the effect. Many times we won't stand still long enough to find out the cause. The cause is the why.
Mm,
Why is this surface reality this way? You got to get to the root of the matter. When you do that, you'll find the cause.
mm,
Then the surface reality makes more sense to you. Now you have more clarity and insight in how to deal with what you see. But as long as we just jump to conclusions based on our assumptions off of what we see, you're always going to be misinformed.
yeah.
It's like I said in the book. If you don't mind, I'll share this.
Go ahead, please, 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 please.
Yeah, when you're on the outside looking in, all you think you know is what you see from where you stand.
Hmm.
Then you assume and you draw your conclusions from those assumptions, which still leaves you misinformed. So your assumptions and your conclusion is irrelevant. You're still misinformed because you just came to an automatic conclusion based on something you don't fully understand.
Right.
Cause and effect. Misery in the company it keeps. Miserable people, they okay with the lie. They okay with the misinformation, the misdirection. They're fine with that because it's exciting. Truth brings a finality to it. A lie is open-ended. By the time that the truth catches up with the lie, it is a 10-mile long string of ghetto sensationalism.
Right. Right. Right.
You got a
Yeah.
decision to make. Am I going to chase the lie down to try to rectify it because it's not true? And if I do that, then I lose time for my purpose.
Yeah.
I had an elder, she's no longer here, told me, don't you ever stop what you're doing to chase down a lie.
Mm.
Let it do what it's going to do. You keep doing what you're supposed to be doing. And it's not easy
Right.
because you want to defend yourself.
Yeah.
You know, it's not easy. But then you lose valuable time. And you
Hmm.
also feed that mental, uh, 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 what is it? Uh, you feed you the warfare. You feed the mental warfare going on in your mind. Now you're
Hmm.
torn between what you're supposed to be doing and this thing over here that is really insignificant in the bigger scheme of things. The more you pursue that, the more intense the warfare becomes from a mental perspective because they're lying on me.
Yeah.
Now your work is undone.
Yeah.
Your work is being neglected. Your blood pressure is going up. You're losing time. Now you inadvertently have become the company that misery loves to keep.
Mm. That's powerful. It is because I think I was at a point in my life where I was wasting time worrying about what people thought about my motives and my what was driving me to do what I did. And I was trying to prove them wrong that I was just misstepping a
Right.
lot, making a lot
Right.
of bad decisions and missteps.
As you read in the book, what I said, when you pay attention to your critics, you give power to your enemy. When you pay
Hmm.
attention to your critics, you lend power to your enemy. That's what they want.
Hmm.
They want your
Hmm.
attention.
Yeah.
You know, uh, the things they say and do are attention-getting devices to knock you off your square. The more angry and frustrated you get, the stronger they become.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what do, Craig? You starve them.
Mm.
You starve them. That's what you do. You starve because it has an insatiable appetite.
Yeah.
It's never satisfied.
Right.
The more you give it, the more it wants. And the
Yeah.
more miserable you become.
Right.
Now
Right.
you think about the people who are depending on you, and this is what you're doing. This is the decision you made, and you got people who depend on you from in leadership, children, grandchildren,
Hmm.
other community activists, and you all discombobulated because
Right.
you chasing down somebody
Woo.
who is who is irrelevant anyway.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Don't be the company that misery loves to keep.
Right.
Yeah. Should they be held responsible for their reckless tongue? Absolutely.
Hmm.
Some people need a lobotomy. Street justice.
Yeah.
But then what? So
Yeah. Stay focused. Stay focused. Yes. That is the goal. Like I said, every morning I wake up ready to conquer the world. And it really makes me happy once I feel like I've done something that is powerful, that has aided in our liberation, that has helped me with the babies and the young adults that I'm around. I'm not from Mississippi originally, but I tell you one thing: we have a family here. We had Saturday school this past Saturday, and our community is growing, and it makes me happy. It just really does. It gives
okay.
me joy to be. where I am in my life.
Yeah,
And
but
so I will take your advice and I will not allow misery to enter. Um, I'll burn those bridges now. I'm not doing it. So
yeah,
time is precious. After the transition of my parents, I learned how precious it is.
yeah. You don't get it back.
No.
You have people say, well, God could redeem the time. That's a lie.
Right.
I talk about time in here.
Mhm.
Procrastination.
Oh
The
yeah.
time you had today turns into yesterday, and now you're behind schedule
Hmm.
because you put off what you were supposed to be doing today for what you wanted to do that was not important.
Right.
Procrastination can lead you to misery,
Misery. Hmm.
right? Because you can look up after you say, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it later. Pretty soon, 6 months gone by, and what today asked you for 6 months ago is still undone.
Right.
You behind schedule. Decisions.
That's right. That's right. So, family, you want to get this book, "Misery and the Company It Keeps" by our good brother Craig Samuel. So, brother Samuel, Doc, can you tell them how they can order the book? Because I see Angela asked, I call it Tootie, asked if she can order it on Amazon, and I don't think so. But can you give them the order information, and I'll also drop the link in the comments too.
Okay, if you dropped it, yeah, you can drop the link in the comment. But no, it's not on Amazon. I have a bookstore of my own with a link. It's store.bookbaby.com/book/misery and the company it keeps. And that's with hyphens between each word, misery hyphen and hyphen, so on and so forth. So that's the link, and all the information is on that page, and you can order the book from there.
Okay. Yes. And I'm sorry, I'm putting the link in the chat. So you want to order your copy ASAP. And
Please
I
do.
tell
Please
you,
do.
you will read it in like a day. I think I read it in a day and a half, but I was distracted a couple times. But yeah, I was taking notes and underlining and just so excited because I'm like I said, I stepped all over my toes. And so even tonight, he stepped on my toes, but in a good way because I like to grow. I like the process. It's not easy. It's sometimes painful, but it is a process. And I
Definitely.
will leave you with the closing remarks um, for our guest.
When your outgo is more than your income, your upkeep will be your downfall.
Mm,
When your outgo is more than your income, your upkeep will be your downfall. What am I saying? You don't extend too much energy to people who don't deserve it. Otherwise, that will be your downfall. You want to receive all the good positive energy that you can possibly stand moving forward.
Asante Sana Baba. Thank you so much. And again, if you all watch Sister Mila and I Moments with Mila, we look forward to having Baba come on that platform as well. And I will keep everyone posted as I'm sure she will and Baba will as well. Again, go to the website and purchase the book. You will not be disappointed. We have many comments had many comments during the broadcast that explain that as well.
Okay.
So next month is like one of my favorite times of the year. I know a lot of us are Black 365 24/7, but I love Black History Month because it gives us the opportunity to remember the life and legacy of one of our greatest minds, Dr. Carter G. Woodson. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm always trying to put together some type of program in my place of employment, in the community, and in my home. And so next month, I'm going to be talking about, as I have done for the last 3 years, the miseducation of the Negro.
Mm-hmm. Excellent book. think you did. You freeze, Crystal? I don't know if you can hear me, but you froze. It's like Crystal is having some technical difficulty. I'm trying to wait on her to come back in. Those of you, until she comes back, if you can still hear me, pick up your copy ASAP. You will not be disappointed. Misery and the company it keeps. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. If you can still hear me, those of you who are still there, I hope you enjoyed the discussion. I know I did. Look, there she is.
Okay, I was just talking about Carter G. Woodson, and my Wi-Fi goes out. How
Yeah,
convenient, right?
yeah.
But I will be talking about the miseducation of the Negro. It's something that I discuss every year, and I also am going to be focused, and I'm not going to procrastinate, Bob, and finish reading this book, Fugitive Pedagogy. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
the Art of Black Teaching. Carter G. Woodson and the Art of Black Teaching by Jarvis Givens. I have started it, have not yet finished it, but I am determined to finish it 2023 in February so that we can begin the discussion because right now is a critical time for Black education. And being a person who is committed to teaching us who we are, um, it is frustrating to say the least. And so I think that we have to use everything, as Baba John Henry Clark said, at our disposal,
Absolutely.
our liberation. And
Absolutely.
Black History Month is one of those things that we need to use. When Prodigy Woodson developed Negro History Week, that later evolved into the month, there's a theme that is focused on every year. And I didn't know that until last year that there's a theme. So this year, the theme is Black resistance. And so I'm super excited about that concept because a lot of our young adults and some of us don't understand it, how our ancestors and our elders fought back in,
Mhm.
in several different ways, whether it was physically, whether it was through art, whether, even, we were speaking earlier, John Carlos and Tommy uh, Johnson. What's his name? Tommy Johnson?
Smith.
At the 68 Olympics. So
Right,
there's always been some type of resistance. Nat Turner,
right,
Denmark Vesey. There's
yeah,
always been resistance since
right.
we were stolen and kidnapped and brought here. And so I'm excited about the theme for this year. So you all be on the lookout for that. And be sure to get Baba Craig Samuel's book because that is a form of resistance. We got to fight back here too. It
Right,
starts here.
right. You develop healthy network, healthy circle. You know, sometimes it's a little hard to do, but
Yeah.
taking your time to vet people properly, giving yourself the necessary time, develop healthy allegiances or alliances, relationships. And I promise you, it'll keep the vampires at bay.
No doubt. No doubt. So I'm
All
going
right.
to end here and look forward to seeing you all again soon. Y'all have a great evening. And again, Asante Santa to all who tuned in. Peace.